Greetings and salutations, scholars, and welcome back to Classical Chinese for Beginners. Last time we delved into the weight of jade in Chinese culture. We also learned how to wield so and zhi together, how to say right now or right when with fang, how to mark a point in time with zhi shi, and lastly, how to wield yi and wei together. A full bowl of rice indeed. Well, I hope you worked up an appetite during my months of radio silence, because Uncle Wormwood has cooked up a spread for you. We'll go over 18 new characters, learn how to wield yu and dang. We'll also meet 2 ancient Chinese wonderchildren, whom you'll be glad your mom never tried to compare you to, and much more. But ere we look forward, we must first look backwards, so let's have a look at everyone's homework from last episode. It seems that most of you were having some trouble with the line wei ren zi. Quite understandably so, it is a tricky one. So let's unpack it together. Word for word, the line is wei, to be, ren, man, and zi, child. Here, wei is a co-verb meaning as or being or in the role of. Ren is man, human being, and zi is child. However, there is an unseen zhi hiding between ren and zi, and together with wei, we thus get being or in the role of a human child. I think Herbert Giles' oversetting is quite trim and fitting. He who is the son of man, although I myself might slim it down to as the son of man. Hopefully this clears things up for everyone, but if not, I'll be happy to go into autistic detail in the comments. Now that that's over and dusted with, let us get into the meat and earth apples of today's lesson. Xiang, jiu, ling, neng, wen, xi, xiao, yu, qin, so, dang, zhi, rong, si, sui, neng,让, li, ti, yu, 长 宜 先 知 香九龄能温习 孝与亲所当执 融4岁 能让梨 悌与长 宜先知 香 Sweet smell, sweetness, also a name. From shu, millet, a type of grain, over gan, sweet. The sweet and honeyed smell of fresh millet. Later, shu got switched out for he, wheat, which also has a winsome whiff but is less awkward to write, and the meaning was broadened to all kinds of lovely smells, not least sweet smoke burnt as offerings. Here, xiang is short for Huang Xiang, a wonder child born in the Eastern Han. More on him later. Jiu, 9. A drawing of an arm bent at the elbow. Shockingly, jiu once meant elbow, but as early as the Shang Oracle bone writings it was borrowed for the same lauding word 9. The word for elbow was later written as meat, and inch, read as zhou in modern Mandarin. I'm sure there's a smutty joke in there somewhere, but I think we all know I'm way above that sort of thing. Ling, age, years old. From chi, teeth, and ling, which gives us the reading. The character chi itself is also sometimes used to mean age. Teeth are a fairly good hint at someone's age after all. To look a gift horse in the mouth comes from deeming a horse's age and fitness based on their teeth. Like kicking the tires of a used car. Prudent when buying a new horse, but rude if it is a gift. Neng, can, may, mighty. A drawing of a bear, borrowed for the same lauding word meaning can, may, mighty. If you don't see why bear is a good way to write mighty, then you've clearly never met a bear in real life. The word for bear, xiong, now has a fire tacked on at the bottom. Nerd note! At the earliest, xiong meant blazing fire, wherefore it has the fire bit at the bottom. I don't know about you, but I always thought this character was weird as heck. Even more so when you learn that there's another character for bear with a dog bit tacked onto it. In my meager mind, this character fits much better and is one stroke shorter to write than the standard one, but for sakes unknown, it never caught on. Oh well. Wen, warm, lukewarm, warmth. From shui, water, and wen, which gives the reading. The cozy warmth of a cup of tea or a hot bath after a long day. Note that in the text, wen is a deed word, a verb, to warm something up. Nerd note! The root character wen is one of those Chinese characters that keep me up at night. Xu Shen claims it shows a prisoner being given food, thus the warmth is the warm and fuzzies you get from showing goodwill to your fellow man. Unearthed writings, however, seem to hint that the character at the earliest showed someone taking a bath. There are also hints that the character was merged with some other character during the Warring States. In short, it's a right mess, but one we will have to clear up some other time. Xi, mat, straw mat, seat. From shi, stone, giving the reading, over jin, cloth. A straw mat laid out on a stone floor. Cozy. Put in a gaming PC and I would be moving in there yesterday. In China, woven reed mats are one of the oldest and handiest of homewares, fit both for sleeping and sitting on, wherefore xi also means seat. Even long after beds, stools and benches became widespread, straw mats are still brooked every day all over China, especially in summer. Xiao, filial piety. From lao, old, over zi, child. The young carrying the old, in every meaning of the word. The virtue of xiao lies at the very heart and soul of Confucian and therefore Chinese culture, and all the cultures it touched. It's kind of a big deal. I will be going into xiao in some detail in a bit. Yu, in, on, at. From another way of writing wu, crow or raven, borrowed for the same Liaoding word meaning in, on, at. More on that in the grammar section. Dang, right, fitting as well as ought to, will or shall. From shang, which gives the reading, over tian, field. The root meaning is fields laid out facing each other, the correct way. Dang later came to mean right and fitting as well as ought to. Farmlands ought to be laid out in a neat and tidy manner. Zhi, to take, to grasp, to hold, to uphold. A drawing of a man in handcuffs, someone who got taken and is being held. Chauvel claims it is an outlaw that has been caught, but seeing as this character is found on bronzes from thousands of years ago, it is equally believable that the poor man in this character is a slave caught in a raid. The root meaning is to fang, to grab, to take, later widened to hold or to uphold. No point grabbing something if you're not gonna keep hold of it, right? Rong, steam, heat, to melt, to blend. Also a name. From li, a kettle or roaster, and shortened down chong, worm, bug, giving the reading. When the kettle is seething, the steam rises in the air like writhing worms. Here, Rong is a name, short for Kong Rong, another Chinese wonderchild from the Eastern Han. We'll see more of him in the commentary. Si, 4. A drawing of air fleeing a pair of nostrils. Wait, what? The root meaning is to breathe out, to exhale. At the earliest, 4 was written as 4 breathwise strokes stacked on top of each other like a cheeseburger. This way of writing could easily be mistaken for 2 2s or 1 and 3, so the same sounding character si was borrowed to write 4. The meaning to breathe out was then written with a mouth radical tacked on, though this character is seldom seen even in written works. Sui, year, age. From yue, a war axe giving the reading, and bu, to walk, to wander. The root meaning of sui is the wandering star Jupiter. Jupiter goes around the sun every 11.86 Earth years, or 12 years rounded up, so it's a great way to keep track of the years, and likely where the 12 earthly branches came from. Sui went from being the year star to meaning year as a whole, as well as years of age. Note that while sui, ling, and chi can all mean years of age or years old, only sui can also mean year, that is, a period of 365 days. Rang, to yield, to give in. From yan, speech, to speak, and xiang, to take off or withdraw. Xiang is another tricky root to unriddle. Some say it shows a farm tool wielded for plowing, others that it shows a man taking off his shirt before work. Whatever this root shows, it is often seen in words that have to do with withdrawing or taking something away, so the thought behind rang seems to be that one verbally withdraws from something, that is, to yield or to give in. Li. Pear, pear tree. From li, boon or windfall, which gives the reading over mu, tree. Eating pears is a boon to your health, see? Di. Younger brother, little brother. A drawing of a spear shaft wrapped in strips of leather, one after another. A younger brother must come after an older sibling, so the character D was broke to write younger brother, little brother. However, here, D is read as T. Aye, that's right, it's another one of those pesky Chinese characters with two readings. When read as T, this character means brotherly plight or to love and heed one's elder brothers. Nerd note! I couldn't find any word law that spells it out, but from what I can tell, T is an offshoot of D, and can mayhap be most easily understood as to behave as a younger brother ought to. The two words were written the same throughout the classical age, and the heart was only tacked on after the Han dynasty. Furthermore, the two readings were the same until very lately, as the Kangxi wordbook tells us that both D and T were read with a D onset. Why was the reading changed? Who knows? Sometimes it do be like that. Chang. Long, length. A drawing of a man with long hair, brooked to mean long or length of time and things alike. This character also has two readings, and here it's meant to be read as zhang, to grow, as well as old, aged, elder. If you want long hair, you gotta let it grow, so someone with longer hair than yourself was naturally your elder. Xian, first, before. From zhi, the root meaning of which is to go, over ren, man, one who goes ahead, the one who leaves first. It's often seen together with another character, ho, behind, rear, after, which we won't see for a while in the TCC, but I'll go over it anyways, because I can. From chi, the left half of a crossroads marking movement, and a drawing of a foot tied with a rope, thus lagging behind. The original meaning is behind or rear, it also means younger or aftercomer. We'll go over both xian and ho in the Staffcraft, and speaking of which... Nung is a deed word, that is, a verb meaning can or may, as in being bodily fit to do something, rather than a learned skill. To wit, 如能知乎, nung. Here, 如 is the second person pronoun singular, thou, and hu is a sentence final particle marking a question, akin to modern Mandarin, ma. For those of you with no background in Chinese languages, think of hu as an outspoken question mark. As such, A asks, thou canst it, ? Or canst thou do it? To which B answers, nung, meaning can, I can, or simply yes. More often, however, we see nung wielded alongside another deed word, same as with English can. To wit, 人能言不能飞. Humans can speak, but they can't fly. While nung is often seen alongside another deed word, if we're answering in a frame, we need only write nung, like so. 人能言乎? Nung. 人能飞乎? 不能. Apart from a deed word, nung is also a name word, that is, a noun meaning inborn skill or might. To wit, 如有何能? Thou hast what skill, or what skills dost thou have? The meek and therefore right answer is 无能, no skill, or I have none, or even I'm worthless. You wouldn't believe how many people in ancient China got hired after answering this at their interview. Soothly, the past is a foreign land, and they do things very differently there. And speaking of lands and places... Yu is a small but mighty word. In classical Chinese, it is the go-to all-sex preposition, and as so much else in classical Chinese, its meaning shifts with the context. We put yu between the verb and the object. To wit, 处于山, to dwell on a peak or to live in the hills. 学与师, to study under a master or to learn from a teacher. 宜人, suitable to or for humans. You know, like those very human designs on TikTok. 严于子, strict towards the child or towards the children. In the text, we see 语 brooked twice. 孝与亲, ti 与长. Show filial piety toward one's parents and brotherly love to your elders. In a way, we can think of 语 as the classical Chinese Swiss army knife of prepositions. We also brook 语 to set two things against each other, showing that something is bigger, smaller, taller, shorter, better, or worse than something else. To wit, 父长与师. Note that this character, when read as 长, means long, but when it's read as 长, it means either to grow or elder. So, my father is older than the teacher. As we can see, here too we put 语 between the stative verb and the object. Some sayings may seem less straightforward, like 善于, which means either to be good at doing something or to be better than, but not to be good to someone. To wit, 窦燕山善于教子. Mr. Crack of the Swallow Peaks is or was good at teaching his sons. For good measure, here's one more byspell, a quote from the Yellow Emperor's inner classic. 天赋地在，万物西备，莫贵于人. 天赋地在 is a stock phrase. The sky was seen as a dome covering the whole world, while the earth was seen as a wagon that carried everything upon it. 万物, the 10,000 things, is another stock phrase meaning everything in existence, but more often we see it used narrowly to mean all living things. 西 means all, same as 具. 备 means to be ready or fulfilled, and 莫 is a negative particle meaning nothing or nobody. A straightforward oversetting might be heaven covers, earth carries. When the 10,000 things are all laid out, nothing is dearer than man. Which is something I think we all should keep in mind more often. And speaking of should, if we want to talk about things yet to come in classical Chinese, we can place 当 before the deed word. To wit, 夫子当教之. 夫子 is a term of respect, like 子. However, unlike 子, 夫子 is mostly said of a teacher or scholar, somewhat like English master, and often marks the teacher himself, Confucius. Thus we can read this sentence as the master will teach it. Another byspell. 道人当迁于燕山. The Taoist will move to the Swallow Peaks. In classical Chinese, there is a fine line between will do and should do, so 当 can also mark that something ought to be done, which is the meaning we see in the text. 孝与亲所当执. Note that 执 can be wielded abstractly to mean grasp, as in having a firm understanding of something. Thus, filial piety towards one's parents is that which one should grasp. And another byspell, just for fun. 孝子当温席. A filial child should warm the sheets of their parents. With all these oughts and shoulds, you likely wonder what comes before and what comes after, which brings us to the last grammar point for today. 先 and 后, before and after, are two characters that are often seen together. 先 started out as a deed word, meaning to go first or go ahead of. Most often, we see it brooked as an adverb meaning earlier, former, before, first, etc. While 后 means after, behind, to come later, and so on. Many times we'll see them together, marking a string of things happening back to back. First A happens and then B happens. To wit, 先学礼后知义. First, learn the rights. Later, one will know righteousness. And here's another one. 人先近之后远之. Men would first draw near to it, then they would withdraw from it. And one more for good measure. 先孝父母后悌兄长. The character 兄 means older brother, so 兄长 means older brothers and elders. Begin with showing filial piety to your parents, then show brotherly love to your older brothers and elders. And this last saying also makes for a good lead-in to today's Chinese culture notes. Today we've seen the TCC shift its spotlight away from the weight of learning itself to why learning is key in the first place. For more than 2000 years, teaching and learning in China was less about what we think of as book learning today. You know, grammar, math, chemistry, physics, socialist interpretive dance, all that jazz. And more about teaching good morals and ethics. In short, the Chinese believed that it was better that RQ everyman was unlettered but upright and law-abiding, rather than well-learned but shameless and untrustworthy. You know, they might have been onto something there. And as with so much else in Chinese culture, we can trace these thoughts back to the Big C himself. In Confucius' outlook, Ren, meaning kindness, warm-heartedness, or straight-up love, is what makes the world go round, and the roots of Ren are Xiao and Ti, that is, filial piety and brotherly duty, or in plain English, heeding your elders and betters. As Confucius' disciple Master You says in the Analects, 其为人也孝悌，而好犯上者，先矣. Those who show filial piety and brotherly duty, yet are wont to rise up against those above them, are few indeed. In this quote, Master You neatly wraps up why Confucius thought filial piety and, to a lesser degree, brotherly duty were so weighty. For you see, someone who heeds their father and mother will, in Confucius' mind, also be an upstanding, law-abiding, tax-paying member of society. Press X to doubt. If you want to read about Confucius' thoughts on Xiao in their fullness, I recommend the Legge translation of the Xiaojing, that is, the classical filial piety, which you can find on the Chinese Text Project website. Link in the description. Today we'll be meeting the model filial child and good younger sibling, represented by two wonderchildren from the Eastern Han, Huangxiang and Kongrong. Huangxiang, also known as Huang Wenqiang, was a famous scholar and high-ranking official in the Eastern Han. When he was only 9 years old, his mother had her name forever wiped off the imperial census list. And to say that little Huang took his mother's death hard is an understatement. You see, during the mourning period, which lasted for 3 years, little Huang almost got put on a shirt himself. He became thin, pale, and sickly, to the point where people around him started asking if, maybe, just maybe, he was overdoing it just a little bit. After 3 years had passed, Huangxiang made it his life's mission to be the kid everyone else tells their own kid they should be more like, by waiting on his widower father hand and foot. Now, it's always iffy to guess the inner workings of someone who has been dead for 2000 years, but tell me this doesn't sound like Huangxiang was blaming himself for his mum going to see King Yama, and that being the most painfully filial kid in all of China was his way of making up for it. The Huangs lived in food stamps and chirp of the ceiling bird levels of poverty, and Huang Sr. couldn't afford to keep any help around the house. So in summertime, little Huang would use a fan to cool his dad's bedsheets before bedtime, and in winter he'd lie down in his dad's bed beforehand to warm it up for him with his own body heat. I don't know if any of you have ever laid down in an ice-cold bed before, but I can tell you, it ain't fun. Later, 善枕温馨, to fan the pillow and warm the quilt, was said of anyone who has their filial piety stat absolutely maxed out. Now that's a pretty tough act to follow, so let's see what the other guy had going for him. Kongrong, also known as Wenju, was a poet, politician, minor warlord, 20th generation aftercomer after Confucius himself, and card-carrying snarker. Wow, I like this guy already. While being an absolute menace to society, and toward a certain Cao Cao in particular, at home Kongrong was meek and well-behaved even at a very young age, as we'll see in the following story. 荣4岁，与兄10里，折饮小者，人问其故，答曰：小儿，法当取小者。 When Rong was 4, he was eating pears with his brothers, but he would only take the small ones for himself. When someone asked him about it, Rong answered, I'm the smallest, so I should be eating the small pears. So that's way less dramatic than Huangxiang's tragic backstory. Why are they even in the same place? I don't know about you, but I was a greedy little glutton when I was a kid, so a 4-year-old showing restraint like that is pretty darn impressive if you ask me. As such, the story does its job, showing that Rong was a #good kid who understood that sharing is caring, or rather, he understood his place on the pecking ladder. We have to keep in mind that the TCC was written for children, and the tales of Huangxiang and Kongrong are easy to grasp by spells of how to be both Xiao and Ti. Fulfill your role as a good son or daughter by making sure your parents are comfortable, and be a good younger sibling by respecting your older siblings. And if this all sounds a bit performative, you're bang on the money. After all, the whole point of Confucian role ethics is that as long as people fulfill their roles and do the things that are expected of them, they will, sooner or later, internalize their place in society, and when everyone knows their place, there will be no conflict. Allegedly. But I think that's quite enough of Confucian morals for today, so let's wrap this show up, shall we? This episode took a while to come out, and I'm sorry. I've had a lot going on in good old meat space, and I wanted to build up a bit of a backlog of videos, so I took some extra time to prep a handful of videos to be released over the coming weeks, which hopefully means I won't have to stress out so much over each video. And hey, might even mean more regular updates. No promises though. Any which ways, you all know the drill by now. Let me see those oversettings down in the comments, and we'll go over them in the next episode. And if you want to support my work, feel free to join the Chinese Merchant Guild by supporting me on Patreon, as well as liking, commenting and sharing. All that good stuff. Remember to hug your mother, tell your dad you appreciate him, and have a very Merry Christmas. You're all truly wonderful. Until next time, scholars.
我们把它抛在雪橇上，看着飞奔向前方。Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way。我们今日多快乐，坐在雪橇上。Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way。我们今日多快乐，坐在雪橇上。穿过大风雪，我们坐在雪橇上，飞奔过田野，我们欢笑又歌唱。